Hello, my name is Norman Valdez, and I welcome you to the first English episode of the BrainTrainr AI for Social Impact podcast. So far, we had episodes in Spanish. However, we'll be featuring a number of various guests across the span of the AI space.
My name is Alex Tveit. In this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Allison Cohen. She is a senior applied AI project manager within the AI for Humanity team at Mila. In this role, Allison works closely with AI researchers, social science experts, and external partners to professionalize and deploy socially beneficial.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the BrainTrainr podcast. I'm joined here today with my colleague Alex and our wonderful guest, Allison Cohen. I'm very excited to welcome you, to talk to you. And yeah, Alex, kick us off.
Yeah, no, I did. It's really exciting to have this conversation. Really is interested to start the conversation and learning about, given the fact that you're working with Mila, which is a large AI research organization, understanding you're not an AI researcher. How did you come into the space, and what did your journey look like to come to work for Mila?
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to connect with this audience. Yes, that's right. So my background is sort of unconventional among folks in AI, given that I never really studied artificial intelligence, let alone programming or even data science, unfortunately, which I probably should have. So my background is actually in international development, and I did a master's in global affairs. My interest has really always been in sort of this multidisciplinary study of the world and what's creating change, what's creating impact, what's creating progress for communities, societies, religious groups, what have you. And in that context, I've always been quite keen to understand those forces that are creating change. And during my master's program, I was quite surprised to learn that some of this technological progress that we were seeing with artificial intelligence wasn't really being embedded into our studies. And so I tried to supplement what I was learning with more, external information about how the field of artificial intelligence was developing. And I realized that this was something that my colleagues were also looking for. So I ended up starting a think tank where we brought in businesses, business leaders, think tank members, and others in the Toronto ecosystem that were looking at artificial intelligence, and sort of having them brought in and having them speak about some of these cutting edge developments that they were seeing. And then we would sort of talk through from the angle that I thought was actually incredibly relevant, which is that of, global affairs, talking through some of the implications of the technology and maybe how to mitigate some of the ethical risks that we were seeing coming up through, policy, which is the lever of change that we were most familiar with. After that, I realized that it's very difficult to regulate AI if you don't have an understanding about how it's being built. So I got into AI by my sheer curiosity in terms of how it's being designed and developed. I started working in consulting and AI strategy at Deloitte. I started volunteering as well for an AI ethics organization, again, to get as close as possible to some of those societal implications of this technology. And then it was really by connecting with folks at Mila, understanding how the portfolio needed to be sort of created from scratch, and seeing an opportunity in applying my skills from the consulting world into academia, where I could help, manage some of these projects that have a social orientation to them, and actually trying to scale them to generate some kind of societal impact. It was a very exploratory space. I think that's the beauty of academia, but it's given me a really amazing platform, and so I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
So for me, so there's something about this technology that is quite different, I think, than others that I have witnessed. I don't know what exactly is that. I think you describe yourself as a non-technical. I can say maybe that I am technical because I have a technological background at U of T with information studies, and I did take some programming courses, so I have an understanding of all of that. But I don't know if it's exactly that or what exactly just gives it away. But I think, and I can speak also maybe with Alex as we talk about it, just what a shock that was to come across. Yes, particularly ChatGPT. I don't like one of the first ones that like checking out in November 2022 when it came out and started to just have chats with it. And then the answers that I would reproduce. And then a little bit later on, the ability to actually speak to it. Just something clicked on me. I know it clicked for a lot of people that this is just another thing that we're talking about. This is another animal. And that therefore, concentration to be able to get into it as much as possible, as being as difficult as it is, with the information that just keeps coming. It's every day today, this week, there's more and more and more. Can you speak maybe a little bit about how that was experience about for you, the first moments of encountering and then realizing perhaps that inflection point that it is a little bit?
That's such a good question. I think it blew pretty much everyone's minds, but maybe especially the folks that were working in the field directly, which is sort of counterintuitive, because you think maybe we would have anticipated it a little bit better. And, there are plenty of folks out there who say this was, in the works for years before it came out. But I think even the people that were aware of that will still tell you how surprised they were just by the quality of the tool. And I think the biggest shock that created for me is any of the work that we have been doing to date going to be relevant in the future? In the sense that a lot of the work when it comes to AI is highly specific. You're thinking a lot about that particular application, data set to use to train the model to do exactly what it is you're looking for it to do in the future. Whether that is, I'll give you a very specific example. I was working on a tool at the time. It was a data set that we were building that contained instances of misogyny found in movie scripts. And we were working with expert annotators to label this data for what type of misogyny it contained, try to reduce or remove the misogynistic implication. And of course, our goal was to train various NLP algorithms to be able to do the same in the future, which is identify misogyny, categorize it, reduce or remove the misogynistic implication. And of course, the question that came up right when ChatGPT came out was, these models can do all of the work that we are doing in the context of this project, maybe without this data set that we're creating. And it can do a lot more than that as well. And maybe it can even generate a synthetic data set. Maybe it can do its own annotations. So I think it almost created this fear that all of the work that was being done in AI, that and more, so much better than the models that you were training on these small data sets, just by virtue of the size of the data set that had been used to train foundation models like ChatGPT. These models really benefited from being able to learn about so many things at the exact same time that, again, it just performed so much better than learning on just one task. That created a big shift for us specifically.
Yeah, I don't know if you both looking recently at the advanced voice from ChatGPT and the use cases that I'm deploying. Like I was watching one where the model was asked to tell a story, and it told the story not only with the specific voice but actually with the specific sound effects.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing.
And I think I saw somebody comment that I was like, audiobook. People that do audiobooks are gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I heard about another use case where you can actually, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, but I think you can have people write up some comments that they have on a book. So like famous figures, like I want to say Lena Dunham, but we might have to fact check this. You can have people like Lena Dunham comment on her favorite book, and embed her comments or, fine tune a large language model on her comments. And out of that, create almost like this interactive version of Lena Dunham that you can engage with as you are reading a book, almost like a book club. So it's really amazing what these things can do.
And also equally amazing and dangerous is I was able to, I think it was a month ago now, copy Norma's voice within like 5 minutes and really have him speak in any language on any subject. And that's something that you can do with such a small clip. But I just want to go back to a little bit about the change that we all really felt, even though AI and machine learning has been around for a while. The AI and ethics has been around for a long time. There's been a lot of important work done prior to the current boom. Do you feel like we're actually getting better at doing some of the work? You would think that we are, but if we're looking at technology overall, going back, for instance, on looking at low tech, like tampons, for instance, was never tested on anything but pig split. But you may think that's back in the day. Then we come a little bit closer and you think, okay, we're using motion sensor for water, and that was only tested on white skin. It did not work on anything but white skin. But you may also think that, okay, that's closer. We're getting better. Then you're looking at COVID, and the oximeters didn't actually work for anything but white skin, and then the detection for COVID was significantly less for non-white skin. Are we actually getting better, and what does that mean for biases intended or otherwise in trade, in LLMs, in dataset, in healthcare, and so forth? Are you, as somebody that's actually looking at applied AI in projects, seeing a shift towards it getting better? And is there a collaboration with venture academia to make sure that is happening? Or do you still see glaring issues like the ones
I think there has been, as you said, there's been years of work on the AI ethics side and a growing awareness about things like robustness, having a data set that the models are being trained on that are representative of the communities that you're going to be deploying these models on as well. So, this notion of representativeness. There's also growing awareness about the need for trust building, explainability, transparency into the models and how they're making their decisions. So on one hand, I do think that there are a growing sense of best practices in the domain. But on the other hand, I think that the domain has so fundamentally changed at the hands of some of these foundation models that there are entirely new problems that we have not had years to navigate. Things like the lack of consent with which data is taken from people, the lack of compensation, again, for all of these creative works that the models are then able to have, inspire their work, which may be used instead of the work of an artist. So creating real financial risks for people who are producing that creative work to begin with. I think the field is sort of shifting, where while some of the holes are being patched, there are new holes being created. I know that, in the field of AI regulation, for example, it's this feeling of constantly having to play cat and mouse with, new capabilities. There are new needs for regulatory infrastructure to address all of the challenges that come with it. So I think by no means are we done, and we're actually just seeing the compute power, the data available only continue to grow. So I have no doubt that the challenges in the domain will just keep growing before they, start minimizing, I guess.
Yeah, I'd like to take us a little bit about just meeting you a little bit more what you're working on. So you're working at Mila, and if you just briefly explain to the listeners, because believe it or not, there's people who just don't know what Mila is, and
Shocking.
I come across and explain it. You can explain what Mila is for the audience, and then what are some of the projects you're working on? You can just talk about a little bit them, and also if you can just tell people out there who just listen to the wonderful things that you're doing, and just tell them what would be the thing that makes you do these things. Like, what drives you? What does it take to be able to do this exciting things that you're doing, so that other people can replicate?
I'll start with, what is Mila? So Mila is an AI research center. It's the largest AI research organization in deep learning specifically. It has about 1,000, I want to say 500 masters, PhDs, postdocs, and affiliated professors. So very significant from an academic perspective. There is a connection to the 4 major universities in Montreal: HEC, Polytechnique, UDM, and so yes, the 4th university is McGill. And because of just the size and the scope of the academic side of this work, it attracts this critical mass of not only research interest and academic interest, but also industry. Mila has a number of institutional partners as well, coming from some of the biggest tech firms of the world, that some of whom have a affiliated partnership with Mila, some of whom actually have labs that are located within Mila's office buildings. And there's this idea of sort of cross-pollination between academia and industry. And then Mila, of course, it's actually one of the strategic pillars of Canada's what's called the Pan-Canadian AI strategy. So it's seen as a lever for enabling Canada's status as an AI hub around the world. And one of the ways that it does this is by focusing on tech transfer. So making sure that a lot of what is being learned on the academic side, maybe even in collaboration with industry, is translated into tech projects within industry, sort of an emboldened AI industrial setting. And so my work on the employee side of Mila, of which there are about, I want to say 150, is to think more about how a lot of this academic research can create an impact that can be felt beyond the ivory tower of academia, and instead be generating societal impact in a more applied, practical setting. So your second question was, what is Mila? What am I working on? What I'm working on is a portfolio of socially beneficial applied AI projects, which just means we take really promising academic research happening in AI at Mila that is connected in some way to a social challenge, a social issue, whether that be human trafficking, whether that be the fact that the urban design process can be highly exclusionary of marginalized communities, whether that be the problem of, the prevalence of misogyny in communities, or the fact that policymakers don't have much information about the benefits of regenerative agriculture as an approach to farming that's actually much more sustainable. These are the types of projects that have actually been in my portfolio. And the impact that we're looking to create can be academic, it can be, data sets, models, best practices, and engaging with multidisciplinary stakeholders. It can also be incredibly applied. So one of the projects that we have completed recently was a collaboration with the OECD. Essentially, they were looking for a more interactive search engine for information about global AI policies, because the OECD has what's called the OECD AI Observatory, which is a sort of a platform, a hub, a community working in AI and sort of some of the geopolitics of that work. And so they have many academics from the field of law, from the field of policy, who are often using their platform and wanting to search their database. And so they wanted a more interactive way for people coming from those backgrounds to search. And we happen to have been doing research into ways of communicating to people in AI policy and AI law information about global AI policy and legal developments. So we had worked with them on transferring this product that we had built to to the OECD and having them sort of manage and maintain it over the long term. So we have a pretty wide mandate, I would say, in terms of the types of social impact that we're looking to create, the domains that we're looking to work within. But I think it's allowed us a lot of leeway in figuring out, okay, what are the fundamentals of creating a socially beneficial applied AI project? There was a third question. Was there a third question?
Yeah, no, just if you had.
I would say advice. So I actually had to be quite creative in terms of managing my professional plan, because there's not a lot of people at this point in time, unfortunately, who see the value of multidisciplinary studies in creating and managing AI teams. But I guess my advice would really be look for the people who, and there are many as well, look for the people who understand the value of a generalist as a project manager. And there's a very strong case to be made for that work, because I think you can sort of make a case about the value of the generalist in the role of project manager, because a lot of these AI projects, while they are seen and perceived to be extremely technical, the truth is when you're creating any sort of applied project, there is always going to be a social component to it. And it's not enough to just bring in representatives from those social perspectives. There needs to be someone whose role it is to make sure people are communicating effectively across disciplines.
Yeah, and I think even like now, given that this AI can be so complicated to grasp, it's complicated to me too. It's just, everybody pretty much.
Yeah.
The need to have these concepts communicated in its easiest way as possible it's become more so priority, I think.
And then just speaking a little bit to your, both Mila as well, but maybe specifically you, because some of the projects that you were looking for, you need input and insights and perspectives from people with lived experience as you're shaping the projects. But then on the other side, you need venture partners to make it more practical and live it. How do you see both Mila's role as well as kind of your role in Mila? Canada, for instance, has an issue when you're looking at the AI Act, and they've got criticisms for not having enough insights and perspective from diverse voices. And for instance, when you're looking at community foundations in Canada, but looking to build the ecosystem to have as many diverse voices around the table, how do you see your role, both Mila as well as the work that you're doing, and how can we collectively shape that to make sure that when, for instance, Toronto Police Force are looking to use AI and cameras with facial detection, we have a discussion with diverse voices around the table so that we're not implementing systems that could be detrimental for privacy and for a variety of other reasons. So just anyway, how you see your...
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we see our role from multiple angles. And I think I can sort of explore those angles through the different departments within the AI for Humanity team at Mila. So we have a training department, and the training department is responsible for identifying those stakeholders in the AI ecosystem that would benefit from a new perspective on the work that they're doing on, AI specifically. So whether that is computer science students who would benefit from more information about how to do, an ethical AI reflection, or whether that is policymakers, as you mentioned, who would benefit from a better awareness about how this technology works technically and maybe how it should be regulated. So we have, the angle of upskilling, which is, important in fostering an ecosystem that can engage more critically with the technology. We also have a team that is focused on working very closely with policymakers and responding to new political appetite to whether it's regulate a new subset of this technology or learn from academics about how some of this technology is developing. We actually recently supported Joshua Bengio in, I'm trying to remember exactly the name, but there was I believe it's going to be an annual call for updates on how some of this technology, just sort of the most advanced state of affairs as it relates to specifically generative AI technology, but AI more broadly. And that's sort of a conversation that Mila is helping to spearhead and initiate and facilitate. There's also, of course, my team that is looking at how do we create best practices in creating socially beneficial AI? What does it mean to do multidisciplinary work? What does it mean to work directly with vulnerable communities? What does it mean to engage with the design justice principles in the process? What does it mean to be values driven? What does it mean to be infusing ethics, AI governance? The work that each of these teams are doing is really built around maximizing impact beyond Mila and helping to embolden others in the field to really do their work better so that we can have an ecosystem of AI development that is more socially beneficial.
Yeah, so as you know, Alex and I are emerging technology fellows, along with another fellow at Community Financials of Canada, and very focused right now on seeing how this social impact sector can be supported. We know that the sector specifically can be very fragmented and tendency to work in silos. What are the things that you have observed from your position or from Mila about the things that get in the way of collaboration when it comes to the social impact sector that you might share with us?
Yeah, so I know this may not sound very novel to folks. It may in fact be quite cliche, but I think it's important to sort of reinforce the fact that the techno-solutionist approaches that we tend to see in industry is really holding back the potential for AI to truly create meaningful social impact. And I think part of the reason that we have such a drive towards techno-solutionism is because there's so much excitement around using this technology in in terms of its most advanced iteration. And that impulse isn't tempered by the inclusion of people on the project team who represent the needs of the folks on the ground and can tell you exactly what's going to work, what's not, and can, engage with the most pressing ethical reflections that need to be done. And so I see, this siloed approach to AI being a pretty significant risk to using the resources that we have available in this field in the most effective way possible in terms of genuinely responding to needs that exist on the ground. And I think the way that Mila is combating that is by doubling down on thinking about how we engage with local communities, multidisciplinary stakeholders, how we can make sure that they are compensated just as much as the computer scientists on our team. And really thinking from a structural perspective, how do you engage with each of those individuals on your team in the most meaningful, effective way possible, giving them sufficient decision-making power, for example. And I hope that ends up inspiring other folks in the field to break down those silos, if nothing else, to be motivated by the impact that their work can have.
And just building on that, and obviously some of the work that you're doing to push for diverse voices being included in the conversation around AI for social impact. How do you see Canada being a leader, becoming a leader nationally in responsible AI? We're not likely going to compete with the US or China on the venture side. I think Europe is leading on the regulatory side, but we have a strong social innovation side and very strong AI research side. How can we combine those strengths to be a vocal leader for pushing for responsible AI or AI for social impact purposes internationally? What do you see as opportunities and what do you see as some of the challenges for getting us there?
It's a really good question. I think the opportunity is that Canada is a pretty international hub for AI talent. And I think part of the solution, at least, is having people who see the needs of diverse communities and have them be represented in the computer science field or among those that are making decisions about what projects we should be focusing on. I think Canada also has a lot of grants. It has a lot of opportunities to fund the type of research that aligns with social benefit. And I mean, just seeing now the amount of political interest in Joshua Bengio's work in AI safety, for example, I think this all speaks to the opportunity in the Canadian context to do AI for social good, and maybe the inclination to do that. I think a lot of the people that end up moving to the States to work in AI tend to be slightly more profit oriented. I mean, it obviously depends. There's lots of opportunities, I'm sure, in the States as well to do socially beneficial work. But I find that in the Canadian context, you don't have nearly as much money to make in the field of AI. And there's sort of a potential there that you have a bit of a selection bias. I mean, of course, I'm speaking very generally, and there's plenty of exceptions to this, but there's a little bit more, I think, appetite in the Canadian landscape to be working not only on cutting edge technology, but technology that will actually be useful and meaningful from a community perspective.
Yeah, and moving at a little bit of a broad way of thinking is given like what you've been seeing and the work that you do. What do you think should be in the minds of people, whether it be individuals, whether it be specifically like students who are in the middle of their university education? What should be in people's minds right now when it comes to AI and what's happening and what's coming? What would be the advice, or what would be the approach people should be thinking about?
I think the more that folks are able to communicate to others that don't necessarily have the same background as them is something that will only become more and more important, but also people's ability to learn quickly about other people's backgrounds and their point of view on how the technology that they're building should be developed, or how to incorporate new legislation into the design process is going to become more and more important. I think AI for a very long time has been an incredibly siloed domain, but my sense is with increased regulation, awareness, with all of the lawsuits that are coming out now, the technology is going to become sort of like the other industries in our economy, in the sense that they're seen as being much more multidisciplinary. They need to be tested much more rigorously. There needs to be a humanities perspective on a lot of the decisions that are being made. And all that to say is, I think we're going to need to see computer scientists becoming a lot more flexible to working with a lot of people with different backgrounds.
And just leaning a little bit in on that, especially given the fact that we're working with the Justice Canada and the social impact and philanthropy, we're in conversations around proposals for the government around a nonprofit data lab, for instance. How can, because you, as Mila, looking at applied research, need diverse voices, how can we work better with organizations like Mila? Because the nonprofit sector sits on a lot of underutilized data, how can we figure out ways to make that data accessible in ways that still respect data privacy, data sovereignty, really make it so that it can effectuate positive uses and leverage AI for social? From Mila's lens and your personal lens, how can we effectuate that in most easy ways? Just a small question.
Oh yeah, tiny. It's a great question. There are all kinds of ways that are being explored now in terms of how to share data without compromising the privacy of that data. Federated learning and differential privacy are just the ones that are coming to mind. Mila has all kinds of agreements that allow it to, again, access this highly sensitive data in ways that are minimally invasive or minimally risky from cybersecurity and breaching of privacy standpoint. I think a great way to collaborate with Mila is on an applied project that is identified by members of the nonprofit community as being high impact. I think there are also ways that we can sort of have exploratory conversations about, okay, what data are you sitting on? What are the major needs that you've identified? And then sort of bring a structured approach to figuring out where the most, meaningful application of AI could be and how we could create a project along those lines. So it's a conversation that Mila is quite open to having at this point, but especially when it comes to our AI for social good team, where we are constantly looking for high impact approaches to working on this technology. So I would say reach out. And we can take it from there.
We come to the end of the episode, but I'm going to just ask you a kind of a funny question. And then after that, if you can just tell people how they can engage with you. I know you have a podcast. If there's anything else you want to share, of course, we'll put links below, down here. We're going to put links below. But yeah, anything you want to mention after that. But here's a funny question. So Alex knows that I do these presentations and I have these questions like, where do you see yourself? Are you like a leapfrogger, right? A leapfrogger is somebody who is like very hopeful about, AI can actually be turned into something great and it can actually, balance things up for the very good. And then there's the people who I called the doomsdayers, right? So people are thinking of a Terminator scenario, AGI will kill us, super intelligence. Like, where do you see on that spectrum, if you will? And then, tell us about how people can reach and stuff.
I think I've become a lot more optimistic about artificial intelligence the longer I've been in it and the more that I learn about it and meet the people that are working in it as well. Keep in mind there's a bit of a selection bias where I do end up working with people that have a very optimistic application, at least, of some of this research and are looking to create something meaningful and socially beneficial with it. But I also find that the more you learn about it, the more you understand that the people who are building it seem to want to find ways to regulate it or want to see regulation be developed around it. So that gives me hope. And I think that people are dealing with a lot of the risks from completely different angles, which gives me hope as well. I mean, you have, again, Joshua Bengio, who's working on things like AI safety and existential risk. You also have folks within DARE, the Distributed AI Research Center, who are thinking much more concretely and in a more timely way about the risks that this technology is currently having on all kinds of people, including data workers. And, maybe there's not enough of an emphasis on that amazing work that folks are doing to shed light on some of the very real risks that this technology is creating. And that's sort of why I did create the podcast called The World We're Building. And it's really designed to create greater awareness around all of the ways in which this technology can create very real risks and the amazing work that's being done by folks around the world to make sure that the risks are going to be meaningfully addressed and in some cases, prevent them from happening in the first place. So I would say I'm an optimist in general. Of course, the work will still need to be done to prevent the worst case scenario from happening, which is also, possible.
So I'll put you on the leapfrogger side of things.
Yes, please do.
I try to be in the middle, but sometimes it goes one way or another. It depends on the week.
There you go.
Depends
on the headline.
Or the minute.
Exactly.
So any final words, Allison, Alex, to close off?
No, first of all, thank you for joining the conversation, and I'm excited to continue the conversation. But thank you for sharing your thoughts and your wonderful work. It's
Oh,
great.
my pleasure. Thank you again for having me. And it really is a pleasure to talk more about this. I'm looking forward to hopefully engaging with any members of your audience that have any other questions. And yeah, keep up the great work. It's an important message. It's a really important field, AI for social good. There's so much potential here. So it's a great thing to be talking
I think
about.
we're working on social impact, right? And trying to think about harnessing the ways in which AI has the potential to actually make a real difference in the times of crisis. So I think we'll intersect again, and will be great to have you again, and just to maybe explore a different angle of things that we haven't together.
That would be great.
All right. So will that, yeah. Thanks everybody for listening, and yeah, see you next time.